Cool. Welcome back to the Movie Well Marathon. I'm Andrew, and
I'm Mac,
heck yeah, we're
and we
doing.
remembered to do that this time. Woo!
We did, yes. We're doing Terminator. We're on the third one, Terminator: Rise of the Machines. It's my computer's really slow now because I'm recording.
2003.
It's
Oh no.
directed by Jonathan Mostow. Came out July 2nd, 2003. That's actually later than I thought. I thought this was still like in the 90s.
Yeah, no, this movie was aggressively 2000s. Did you not?
No, I could tell, but like there is a certain amount of like 99 to 2004 where it's just like they're all the
Sure.
same movie. I would have guessed this was like 99, 2000, something like that. So it's a little bit later than I thought. But yeah, Rise of the Machines. You want to start? Cause I'm open to your thoughts.
Well, it does feel like we should maybe mention how difficult this was to watch.
Oh yeah, we've been through a little bit of a journey with this for some reason, almost like it was an omen.
Which the amount of effort we put in
Uh-huh.
to make sure that I could watch this
Yes.
movie
We had to do
is
backflips.
ridiculous.
So I don't know why, but for some reason,
Yeah.
Terminator 3 is like, I think the term I saw on the internet was like geo-locked or something like that.
That's what I saw too.
It's not
Yeah.
on any streaming service, period. Even for purchase, you cannot buy a digital version of it. For some
No, not out there.
ridiculous reason. That doesn't apply, as far as I can tell, to any of the other Terminator movies. Not a clue.
Nope.
I'm sure.
The rest of them are available in both Prime Video and Netflix.
All of them, or YouTube, but like, and
Yeah.
then I had bought Mac like I guess a Blu-ray, and so maybe that's why it didn't work. But I thought the disc player you had was supposed to work with Blu-rays
No.
and DVDs,
It's supposed to work with everything,
and it just
but
didn't with this disc.
it didn't work. I suspect it's simply because it was trying to work through a USB-C, and like it
Ah.
worked for something else that I tried to use it with because I did test it. I was like, hey, let's just make sure that this works, right? But I don't know, it wasn't working with this one. The Terminator movie that we got, which I tried to go to a library to get this movie, and it wasn't available at the 3 libraries that I looked at for it. And like, so you ended up getting me the movie, which was cool. I would have just bought it if I realized you were just gonna buy it. Just so that's out there.
I was confused when you responded. I told you I was gonna get you one. What did you think that meant?
No, what I thought you said was you were gonna send one. Which meant, to me, I was like, you're just gonna put your copy in the mail and I'm gonna get that.
No, I just figured I was just gonna buy you one.
No, so I have 2 DVD players and 1 DVD that is Terminator 3.
Yep.
I have nothing else. I don't have a DVD collection. I just have 2 DVD players.
Oh,
and
should have told me
Rise of the
that.
Machines.
I know what to get you for Christmas. Yeah. So I had foreseen the potential of this, not this particular issue, but the potential spattering of movie placement. So when I was in Half Price Books a month ago, I just bought all of them. So I also it wasn't like I got like a nice cool set. I bought an individual of each one. Like some of them are Blu-ray, some of them are DVDs. So yeah, absolute crazy, ridiculous, stupid journey just to watch this movie that's like at best a C+.
3 weeks to figure it all out.
Yeah, we are a little behind in our marathon on our end. On your end, dear lovely viewer, you'll be fine. This will be right after Judgment Day. Speaking
Not
of
that
which,
any of them are here anyway, because it's
say
been
what?
over a minute.
What?
Not that our listener is here anyway.
Oh,
just
right, because
it's
yeah,
been over a
you're right.
minute.
It's been we're 5 minutes in. We haven't talked about the movie yet.
Yeah.
No one's here. But yes, as I said, speaking of Judgment Day, I'm gonna skip all the way to the end for a second because I like to. This movie has Judgment Day occur, and it's not nearly a big enough deal. I feel like it should be way cooler, way more dramatic, and more
Oh, you mean
impactful.
Terminator. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like way more.
Mhm.
This is the thing, man. Like at this point, from their perspective, we're like almost 20 years into this little trilogy, and this thing that they've been trying to
Mhm.
prevent ends up happening, and I feel no
Mhm.
weight. I just didn't. And I guess
I did, but almost exclusively on like the personal character side of things. And I
yeah,
did not feel the world exploding like I probably should have. But I
yeah.
did feel the tension with the characters that were like left.
I think yeah, and again, I guess circling all the way back now to the beginning, our new Connor and our what was it, Catherine, Katie, something,
Yeah, that's the one. Catherine, I think. And they call her Kate
Catherine.
most of the time.
Yeah, just gonna call her Cat. Cat and John, they do fine. You know, early 2000s young actors. I think they're fine. They
Mhm.
do well. I believe them for the most part.
Honestly, it was all right. I expected after some of the way that the film opened that it would be just kind of like lackluster all around,
Me
but
too.
they did genuinely try in those performances, and
Yeah.
I feel like it was at least equal to the first movie's performances, I would
Hmm.
say. Like
Well,
in terms of just like
yeah.
Kate had no idea what was going on most of the time. John Connor is sort of like he's a little bit tragic. They play him as more tragic than necessary
I think
through
so
this
too.
film, which is kind of weird. But like the actor's doing a good job portraying what he's supposed to be portraying.
Yeah.
So
I think it is fine. And I think there's an inherent awe in any movie when you've got characters kind of witnessing the apocalypse from their bunker that they didn't know they were going to be in. I feel like that applies to any movie. But this movie, I just feel like Judgment Day had more fear and horror and impact in Sarah Connor's dreams in the last movie.
hmm
I just feel like it should have been way more dramatic and not just a silent viewing experience over more classic Terminator Connor commentary. You know what I mean? Like, am I making any sense, or
No, you
am
have
I
a
just
good point.
bitching? I just
No, I agree. I didn't think of it like that, but like Judgment Day in particular is this masterpiece of visual storytelling, in the sense that it communicates what's happening to you without one of the characters kind of being like, "Hey, this is the situation," in their dialogue, right?
mhm.
Um, and this movie doesn't do that nearly as well. There were I think I noted like 3 times where I was like, "Oh, we're back to visual storytelling,"
Mhm.
and then that was it, right? So I would suspect like that kind of has to do with what you're talking about in the sense that with in Judgment Day, right? Yeah, Sarah, the second
Mhm.
movie, Sarah's visions are very real. Like they play out like parents and kids burning on a
Yeah,
playground,
like
you
it's
know?
rough.
Yeah, and in this one, you just kind of get occasional flashes of
Yeah,
bombs,
and like the
and
silos and the
that's
missiles in
largely
the
it.
sky, like we see similar stuff
Yeah,
in X-Men Apocalypse. Like, granted, that's a
yeah.
movie much later, and they've done the trope several times. I don't
Mhm.
know. I feel like I try not to do this too much for this movie, like trying to think of like what I would do differently, because there's not a whole. I get the concept at this point. It's kind of their thing. It's just constant time issues. But if I were to change anything, other than a lot about the Terminatrix, I would have just had the new big bad come back and immediately win. In that
Mm,
they immediately get Skynet up and running, they immediately get the machines going, they rise, they have risen. Because the end of the movie has John saying, like, the Terminator knew and all that. It was never about preventing Judgment Day, it was about surviving. Fine. But the impact of that, I don't really think hits when that only becomes evident in the last minute and a half. I feel like because like the whole
mm,
movie is about them trying to prevent it, and they don't even come close. It wasn't even an option for them, even though we've already had 2 movies that seem to imply it is possible to maybe prevent it. So like if they just came back and they immediately did it, whatever Terminator comes back, turns it on, it's going, and the new Terminator, the good guy, makes it clear your only option right now is to survive. So they have the time, the clock is ticking. You've got 6 hours. You have to survive in order for the humans to win in the long run. Figure it out. What are you doing? I feel like that would have been way cooler.
Actually, an interesting point, and I don't disagree with the sense that like that pitch for the story would probably be more interesting than what we got. I do have to disagree though, in the sense that it kind of happens all suddenly at the last couple of minutes in the movie. It does feel like a sudden turn in terms of like the actual actions that are happening, but they set up the idea that fate isn't actually changeable pretty early on in the movie.
That's true. They just prolong it. They didn't. Okay.
Because like the idea that his schoolmates would also become his lieutenants, which, you know, on one hand makes sort of like interpersonal sense. If you're familiar with someone, then you're more likely to trust them in a life or death situation. But it's also like they're not in school anymore. They haven't been in school for a number of years. They don't really know each other anymore. And the fact that they all happen to be in the same location is just weird. So that's the fate bit, right? But then they have, especially after they kidnap Kate, the story starts to accelerate faster into that idea. I don't have a ton of examples, but I think a lot about how the Terminator is supposed to be unstoppable. That was always kind of the original idea. Like even the last movie ends with the idea that she's like, I'm going to have to fight these guys off for the rest of my life. And then she, in this movie, her coffin is filled with guns, and the placard on the outside of her little like cubicle, I don't know what they
mausoleum
call it,
thing.
Mausoleum, it says something about how you can change fate, right?
It's Kyle's quote. No fate, or the one you make it, something like that. Something about fate.
Yeah, no fate, but what we make. And then the idea is she's like, by preventing Judgment Day, we've set ourselves and humanity on a new course. But when you break it open, her coffin is full of guns, which indicates that she always thought that John was always going to need a stash, which means maybe it really wasn't escapable after all. And then we just kind of dive into it from there. Like once we get more information about the military base, we can see that they're developing the same types of machines that are used in the future battles. Like it's the little drone and the soldier dudes. I don't know. I'm not putting this very eloquently, but basically the film was trying to show that Judgment Day was inevitable from at least halfway on inwards. It just maybe wasn't the best at it.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I do understand. It's just the movie is trying to imply or say outright that you can't change things entirely. But that is still clearly not true with the kind of time travel that they are giving us. The Terminator likes to say all dramatically, you didn't stop Judgment Day, you just prolonged it or postponed it. It's like, that's still implying that time can be changed. It's not like that What If Doctor Strange episode where Christine just has to die. Like, things can be moved, things can be changed, but the events of this new timeline just resulted in something very similar. So I feel like as a viewer, John and Kate going to stop Skynet now to prevent it again, because they've done it before, they can do it again and make a new timeline or whatever, just to find out that no, they can't. Like, we don't find out that for sure solidifying they just can't, because it was never an option. They were not going to wherever the Skynet thing was housed until right at the very, very end. And again, I feel like you spend more time on this countdown of stopping Skynet instead of this countdown of trying to survive. Like, it's just, I'm not sitting comfortably with what the ending ends up being. I know what it has to be as the story continues to move forward. So, but if you're going to keep giving us movies that are all about changing the future, then show us the change. Either give us that change in the beginning and allow us to adapt to this new story, Or have them win and show us another weird way that the Terminator comes back in another 10 years and how they have to like do it again. Like that's his whole life is preventing the future from happening. There's something weird there. I don't know.
Well, and that's what's interesting, like, because this movie clearly wanted to be a departure from the earlier two, where the earlier two were very much about like, I mean, again, if these are technically sci-fi movies, but I feel like they fall under that sort of monster story gothic vibe,
a little bit, sure,
where it's about the anxieties of society and how we're going to end up as a species, right, and as a planet, and it's about the anxiety of the progression of technology, especially artificial intelligence with control over nuclear weapons, the ability like we're placing world destroying tools in the hands of something that's not human, doesn't even understand that it could eradicate all of humanity, doesn't even value that, right? In the first two films, the message is we're probably not going to stop it forever, but by consistently making choices that value humanity and prioritize life over death, we can keep going for at least a little while. And then this third film, they're like, nope, everyone's gonna die, we're all gonna have to live through it, it's just about whether or not you can survive the destruction of the world. And that does not sit well with this internal conflict that they force on John a little bit. He spends like, I don't know, too much of his dialogue is about how he's like, I'm supposed to be the savior of the world, but because I saved the world, no one knows who I am. And I'm like, it's so weird. He spends so much of the film being like this depressed loser because he's like, I'm supposed to be this great general that saves humanity in the war against the machines, but we won that war when I was 12, and now I'm just a loser who like
lives off the grid
because can't go to the hospital.
I'm still paranoid about stuff, and
and it's, I mean, I think it could have been done well, but what it ends up sounding like is that he kind of wishes it had happened so that he could be significant.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And like he spends this entire film trying to prevent it from happening. So there's almost like this weird sacrificial hero vibe he has going on. He's like sacrificing his destiny to be a hero, just not recognized for it, I guess. And I don't know, I think we're supposed to feel character tension on that, but that just makes me feel weird because if you're bummed out that you don't get to be a hero because all of humanity has died, you're not really that heroic, my friend. And that's not who John was in the earlier films. Because he, like, I feel like if they had played way more into John's moment with the Terminator when he says, like, we're really not going to make it, are we? And he's watching the kids play around with some toy guns. Like, lean into that a lot more, and I think he would have had a better film with this, even if it had ended the same way. Where it's like, John is keenly aware of how fragile humanity is and how close everyone is to losing everything, and he still does everything he can to prevent it, even though it feels inevitable. Like, if they had leaned more on that and less on the whole I'm supposed to be a great hero, then I think I would have felt a lot closer to him through the film. I would have been able to like sort of sympathize with him a little bit more. But I don't know, he spent so much of the film being caught up about being a loser, and I'm like, dude,
it would have been kind of cool and heroic and the beginnings of his leadership if maybe he spent more than a second considering saving the other 30 people that the Terminatrix was sent back to kill that are supposedly going to be his best friends. We don't spend any time even attempting to do that. That would have been kind of cool.
She spends the entire time going after Kate, and I think the idea is that Kate's kind of like a higher priority target because she is supposed to have kids with John Connor, and then their kids are going to be like super rebels because military genius and humanity or whatever. I do have to say, in terms of like the role reversals and stuff, which I was still keeping track of in this film, they do okay with that. It's not as interesting as the second film's reversals, but like in this case, maybe kind of weird, but Kate is both Sarah and like later Sarah, she goes through Sarah's arc faster because of her military background and history.
John is kind of Kyle because he has future knowledge. Yeah. It's weird.
Exactly.
I don't like it because he says the line, "You remind me of my mom," after already finding out that she's gonna be his wife. And also, the reason she reminds him of his mom is because she shot a robot. Dude, that's not that unique for this world. So just really?
They have a moment because she grabs a gun and she shoots the robot. It's like it's a moment of great competency for her, right? She's badass.
A confident woman. Wow, you remind me of my mom's. Like, you need to get out more then.
That's the thing is like they have a moment where he like looks at her and she's like, what? And I'm like, my thought was he's gonna say, I mean, he's not gonna actually say it because it wouldn't fit the moment's tone. But I was like, he's just gonna say like, that was hot. And instead he says, you remind me of my mom.
Dude.
I'm like, ooh.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
That was gross.
I just feel like it kind of hurts her character a little bit. Because she's like, they're not making out at the end, but they clearly have growing feelings. And she had a fiance. And I just feel like that was cheap.
You don't have to have a fiance at the
No,
beginning
exactly.
of the film.
I really wish they wouldn't have done that because it wasn't necessary. And I think it hurts her character because I'm all for. I don't fully believe in the only one partner for your whole life. It depends on the person. You know, you might if you end amicably or if you both had that understanding. We're gonna get like real therapeutic right now. But I don't like in movies where it's like, yes, I'm with this person, I love this person, that person dies. Well, Plan B right here is also pretty good looking. So I'm gonna move right on. Like, no, don't do that. That cheapens the last bit. That cheapens the new relationship. Why would you do that? You could have had this person that ends up dying, that like is emotional and manipulated for her to be a sister or a brother or a cousin. There was no reason to have it be a fiance. Like, just not at all.
Yeah, no, and like the thing is, like, out of the two relationships, I would not change the Kate John romance. Like, as much as it needs to be, like, there are some like problems that needs to be worked through. I think that works for the structure of the films. It kind of like fits with the pattern established by the rest of the series, the franchise. But to have a fiance at the beginning of the film, and then in a span of like maybe 3 days, be kind of okay with the fact that you've been locked in a bunker with a kid from high school, like, or middle school, like that's
that you locked in a cage earlier.
And it definitely, it hurts her character. It honestly kind of hurts his character too, because now he's just the only option. And like, it's,
I don't love that. That's not great. I actually almost kind of wish, I know they don't make these with anything in mind, but I know in some capacity she's in the next one. And I almost kind of wish they wouldn't, like the Terminator wouldn't have said anything except, like, if they thought about these with a grander idea, right? And they knew where it was going, and we don't find out anything about their roles together, only that he's back under her orders. And we find out that the Terminator, right? That was fun. That was fun. That's a pro. That was cool. But like finding out that this Terminator also killed future John, like that's all cool. Kind of wish they would have done more with that because they don't. But if they're like, yeah, I'm not under your orders, little ass. I'm under hers. Be like, oh shit. What's the deal there? And then people, of course, in 2003 would have said it was woke and all that because a woman had more than 2 lines of dialogue and whatever. But then to find out in the next movie that they're married and all that, and like, oh my god, that means in the last movie it was his wife that sent back the. Oh, that's so cool! Like that's wild! Like that would have been really fun. Instead, we get the story where it's like, well, I guess we're gonna get together because the robot said so, and now everyone else is dead. So where else can we go? Like.
Yeah. Or I mean, there are other ways to handle it too. I mean, I kind of like the idea because I mean, the pattern established in the first one, Sarah becomes burdened with the idea that even though she's not in a relationship, even though she doesn't currently see anyone, she's not pregnant, she doesn't have a kid, her future kid is going to be the leader of the rebellion, right? And there is something kind of like, I guess, good about the sense that she has no idea who the father might be, and then the twist ends up being, of course, that it's Kyle, and that's good storytelling. But in this one, because we have both players and the Terminators are direct and don't really care about human feeling or emotion, we just get this. It's just served directly at you before you really even have time to think about it. It's like, yes, you two are married, you have kids, and they're going to be a part of the rebellion, and that's why they're after you. It's like it happens all at once. There's no like slow delivery. There's no like reveal. It's just like boom, 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 boom. It's literally one line of dialogue. You learn all that information in. And it's like, dude, you could have paced that a little bit better.
It's also not really that big of a twist in the like him being like Terminator being under her orders. That's cool. That's a twist. But her role is not that big of a twist because we're still in the kind of movie where it's like, oh, woman. She's probably the love interest because what else?
Pass the Bechdel test.
Right, like, exactly. Like, so I mean that's not great. Also, okay,
most movies don't. I know. It's rough.
It's upsetting. But we're halfway through the episode now, and we have to talk about the new Terminator.
Oh yeah, the TX.
Yeah, before we get into like the actual pros and cons, do you feel like there is a huge part of the concept that just seemed to be dropped at some point during production? Because the only reason I can think the future would send back the hot blonde Terminator is because they calculated that at this point in time, John is in his mid-20s and she's supposed to seduce him to get close to him and to kill him. I don't love that, but I do see why they would do that, and it would make sense. They don't do that at all, though. So what was the fucking point? Why do that? What was the point?
Well, what was interesting was like because the second Terminator model, which I've forgotten
T-1000?
what we called him, T-1000, yeah,
yes, T-1000,
the liquid one. He was actually kind of personable. Like he wasn't necessarily a worm when he was portraying a human, but he had normal human. Yeah, he mimicked human interaction pretty well.
Yeah,
and he wore like a human costume the entire time because he understood that it was like a symbol of authority. He can get around and do what he wanted to do while undercover. He wasn't just like pushing people out of the way. This one feels like a model that's designed to do the same thing, and then she doesn't do any of it.
Nope.
She just wrecks stuff. They put her in the biggest trucks they could find so that she just blunt force destroys things. And on one hand, I kind of like that. I kind of like the subversion of expectation. Like she's not here to be an undercover, femme fatale character. She's just here to kill people.
I guess.
But at the same time, it lacks. There's no explanation as for why she would be so, I don't know. Like, there's no reason for her to be that sexy.
No,
I
there's
guess,
not.
If
you're gonna do that, yeah. If she visually reflected how she acts throughout the movie, just make her look like a fucking monster. Just the robot. Just a metal demon, which would be kick ass and super fun. But
they don't ever do that. They don't really ever strip her entirely.
No,
they have
until the very, very, very
end. Her hand shows up, but
I mean, we see her face without the metal skin, just right before the Terminator blows her up. But like, she's never in pursuit like that. Also, I have to complain about this because details. She does at this point the classic Terminator thing, and takes the clothes off of an unsuspecting person, right? Because they show up naked. Ooh la la! All the 12-year-old boys loved it. She teleported through time into a clothing store. Why did she have to go steal the clothes off of a suspecting person and again draw attention to herself? There were clothes all around you.
No, I will say I don't know if this was just a slip by like the editors or the director or what. She has a personality.
Oh, that as well.
She like
has preferences.
I'm not sure where you're going, but like she She preferences when she's smashing stuff in the big truck in like the chase scene. She's smiling.
Yeah,
Like
she's vindictive.
She actually enjoys, like there's some element of emotional reward in her work, which is contrary to the other Terminators who are just routines.
It's also weird that she's more robotic and yet more emotional. No, I thought you had also caught, it was where I was going, when she liquid shapeshifts, it's very clear she doesn't need clothes. She makes clothes all throughout the movie. She shapeshifts into the fiance. She shapeshifts back into the Terminatrix form. She didn't need clothes. So why did we have to do that?
Yeah. I thought of it a little bit differently, where like when she gets shot, like she doesn't have bullet holes in her clothes. She looks flawless the entire time. And I was just like, that's some nonsense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool that she has weapons in her arm, sure, whatever. But like,
and technically she is like the next step up, right? Like the reason she's more like created or whatever is because the T-1000 couldn't have any guns, but now she's a liquid model that can shoot stuff. And they actually do, in terms of like action, I think they do an okay job interacting with the fact that she has kind of an overpowered arm cannon. Like she gets to use it an oppressive amount, and then it gets broken, and she has to kind of adapt and work without it, which is that's good. It's just not emotional character building.
Yeah, I don't know. Her plasma cannon and all that is cool, but I personally thought that the T-1000 seemed like a more impressive threat, and I get what they said before, that he can't make projectiles, he can't make guns, and she can and all that, but like going from the full liquid robot that can fully shapeshift and grow limbs and make swords out of its arms to the Terminator skeleton with a liquid on top of it, I feel like that's limiting it. Like, it's not as, I don't know, malleable. I guess you could say, like, there are things that it wouldn't have been able to do that the T-1000 did in the last movie. I don't walk away from it thinking, oh, that was so much cooler than the last one.
I do feel like, I don't know, the costume design team, even if the direction they went wasn't really Terminator direction, she looks impressive. Like when you look at her, like that is a look. It's a little bit threatening. It's all put together, right? But I agree in the sense that I think the actress does an okay job portraying the sort of like Terminator vibes, with the exception of the fact that for some reason they wanted the vindictiveness in there. But the film just doesn't, I feel like it's the cinematography. I feel like whoever was in charge of the cinematography or maybe the editing is just not good at their job. And I know I'm saying that as someone who has zero experience in the actual film industry, but it just, like, one of my notes is the film is not made well. There are moments of repetitive exposition. None of the framing was good for the emotional moments in the scenes. It was like someone who has had a couple of film classes, got a really big special effects budget, and was told to make a Terminator movie. And it feels like a rough draft in a lot of ways.
I can see that. It doesn't feel like the third in an already established iconic series of movies.
No.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like the idea that's at the core of it's not that bad. Like, we've just been like ripping this movie apart from the start. We've probably got, but it's not.
I don't think the positives are all that impressive. I think the negatives are more gratuitous and sloppy, like I said, because like, the editing, not great. I think the sound effects are very upsetting. Like, the sound effects when he's hanging off the crane are borderline basic and kind of juvenile. Like, it's such basic sound effect. And then when she's getting shot up in the military lab, it's like bubble sounds. Yeah, I get it, she's made of liquid metal, but so was the T-1000. And when he blew up, it was like weird bending metal sounds, like something Magneto would do. Now it just sounds like someone's dropping a rock through pudding. Like, it doesn't sound cool. And like, there were a couple others and I can't remember it now, but like just the sound effects weren't great. The visuals I think are a little hit or miss because again, we're in the world of CGI and for the most part it's fine.
Yeah.
I do think that Terminator, when he gets all torn up, it's the coolest he's looked so far. With like the more of his face being disheveled because the effects are there. Like that's all good and fine. But
I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the film style with the lighting and the CGI, it feels very 2000s to me, like very early 2000s.
Oh
like,
yeah.
And I don't know, that isn't necessarily inherently an insult to the filming, but it was not good for this film, is how I'd say it. Like, I think there was a way that it could have been pulled off, but because everything else in the film looked equally bad, it just didn't work.
No, I totally agree. And to continue to pile on, I think the car chase scenes aren't as good as the last one, like by any means. Like, yeah, they throw all these different remote control cars and trucks at him, but again, it's dumb and she's just destroying shit. I'm not as captivated. I'm not enjoying it as much.
Tension.
There's no built tension. I don't think it's as clever or as fun as the last movie with driving backwards and the chasing with the helicopter and the truck versus the motorcycle versus the dirt bike. Like,
yeah,
it's just not as interesting. And then again, if I could go back to my first point, this movie, the ending is Judgment Day. It's here. It actually got here. It has arrived. This movie's levity is too high when it begins and honestly throughout. To know that during the whole movie, Terminator is wearing a stripper costume, I find a little upsetting because it's not nearly as cool. That's just a little strange. Like, yeah,
I didn't mind that. I didn't even think about it.
I
most
did
of the way through the film.
because I get that it's funny and it is a twist on going again. Terminator goes into a bar, steals someone's clothes. I get that, but we open with John being pretty dark. He's homeless and Sarah's gone and who knows what's happening and the machines are here and a new Terminator's back, and then our main Terminator gets back. Our badass is here. And he's wearing star sunglasses, and he's got ladies throwing dollars at him, and he's stealing a stripper's costume. Whatever. I don't know why in the boardroom it was, what does one of the most badass movie monster guys ever need? You know what it needs, Frank? Levity. A weird amount of it. Because they do the same thing. Right. They do the same thing with the Terminatrix. She comes in and it's all just ooh la la, and then she's growing her boobs in a weird way, which is just remarkably unnecessary. It starts off so, and then again with the crane chase sequence, it is slapstick, and it ends with the world ending. And it's just that's kind of a weird shift in tone and severity and almost theme. I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't
you
love
make a great point because like the first two really, they hold this sort of like horror thriller vibe. Again, not like a full-on classic, like it's not Alien, right? You know, it's not, you know, the tension is kind of like slowly creeping up the entire time or anything like that. But you get introduced to the idea of the Terminator really, really early in the first film. It gets a little monologue about it. And then one of the first things we see is him arriving and being terrifying and, you know, all this other stuff. We get the consequences really fast, starts going around killing people. And then in Judgment Day, they escalate that. Like, they're trying to prevent Judgment Day, so they're driving home the point about the loss of everything, especially with children. Like, again, burning playground, battlefields. We got the stakes. In this one, we also get those things, but they've cleaned them up and changed the aesthetic because the old aesthetic didn't really work for them anymore.
Yeah.
And then we jump immediately to John's like self-loathing monologue about how, or self-pitying is a better word, monologue about how he like can't do anything because he's on the run. And like the vibe is so different because when Sarah's on the run, she's like, my life is going to be tough, but I'm going to handle it because my kid's the savior of humankind. And then when we actually get to John himself, John's like, I was supposed to be the savior of humankind, but turns out I'm just a loser. And it's like, that's like nothing. Eventually, as a character, he does kind of redeem himself from that because the actions that he takes consistently are to save people. But so much of this weird like emo-ness hangs about the character that just doesn't belong there. And then the rest of the film is the people just trying to either survive or they're making, like you were saying, slapstick jokes with the Terminators. Like there's no consistency. There's no understanding of the stakes. If they are gonna, like you were saying, if they are gonna end this movie with Judgment Day, we should start feeling like we are in danger of Judgment Day. They do have the virus thing slowly creeping throughout the entire film, but that's like the only thing that brings tension to the actual like plot of the story of Skynet becoming a threat, and they barely use it.
Yeah.
So it's
and I feel like you could compare that kind of to War Games, where the whole movie is that computer thing slowly getting closer and closer, and then they prevent it. So, like, I think, again, there's a precedent to think, like, okay, there might be a Terminator version of this. Like, yeah, we know this is Skynet. We know it's getting close and whatnot. But John's going to save the day. Because, of course, he will.
Right.
Because why not?
Right.
And I understand, you said it before, and other people will argue, the subversion of expectations. I understand that. But I don't think it's done well. This movie has a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think that's... 70%? I don't... That's... Pardon my French... bullshit. Like that, there's no way. I don't know. It's just a Google search of it. I don't know what the critic versus audience is, so I'm gonna look that up real quick. And while I'm doing that, there was another thing I wanted to complain about. I don't fully understand why John has to be homeless like he is. Like, I get your analysis of kind of where his character is at and all that, but also he's got like definitely a large network of friends / quote unquote family because of the connections that Sarah has definitely made. So I don't get what his deal is. Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes it's a 70% critic score, 46% audience. Thank you, audience, but critics, I'm kind of surprised by you.
That's incredibly high. I mean, I don't know. When I'm watching this film, if I'm being honest, most of the time I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is all right. You know, I'm not struggling to finish it or get through the film like I have been with some other films in the past. And I feel like there's a lot that could work in this film. Like, I honestly think the character of Kate is pretty good. She has some strikes against her, primarily being for some reason they needed her to be engaged to start the story, which in my mind just increases the whole like emo loserness of John because he's like supposed to be with a woman and she's engaged, and oh my gosh, how are they ever gonna figure that out? But like the actual character of Kate and her dad is pretty cool, where she's just this fairly competent person who gets kind of caught up in all of this. She does not believe them right away because who would?
Right.
And she gets to have her own little like kind of Sarah Connor arc, except for that she's a little bit more prepared to pick up some weaponry and fire it at some things. And I think the setup with her dad at the end, where her dad is like, you got to go to this place. This is the base where you can take out Skynet. You got to go there. And they get there and it's just a bunker because he knew everything was hopeless and he just wanted to protect them. Like her mostly, but like them kind of as a pair as well. That's a solid twist. That's good writing. If you're going to have a fatalistic ending, it's just so much of that is buried in the stuff that distracts or bothers everything. They did one or two things right.
Yeah.
That does not a good film make. No. Like it's.
I was thinking of this while we've been discussing, and I feel like if you're gonna make a movie in which the world ends, there's something you might want to do for it to feel more impactful. And I don't know how often apocalypse movies do this, but I'm going to take this opportunity to defend Eternals, actually, because Eternals does do this. we spend time getting to know the people that are going to die. Phastos has a family. Kingo has friends and a crew that he cares about. Cersei has a boyfriend. Like, that's not a lot, but it is people. And Druig has a whole community that he's in charge of. So if the world does end, we have spent time with the people that we will lose. The people that we spend time with in Terminator 3 are already dead. Because they killed the fiance and they killed the dad. So if you're going to keep the fiance, don't kill him. And have Kate know that while she's in the bunker, he's gone. Like, allow, if you're gonna have these other, like, nameless, no nothing, like, also the cat lady, they fucking kill her off right away. Like, give us some time with the humans that we're about to lose. I think that's one reason why I'm struggling to feel it, because there's no one to care about. The people we spend time caring about are fine.
Yeah, no, the lieutenants were a whole collection of people that they could have spent some time developing in this film, especially since they don't really do much with the first half of it. And like, I kind of like the idea of what you're saying, where like maybe the film is a lot of them running around trying to stop the TX from killing the lieutenants, while Skynet subtly takes everything out in the background, right? And suddenly, like, you're not able to use your credit card at the gas station because of the computer outage, and then it slowly becomes more and more of a thing. And then you get to the point where, you know, it's the end of the movie and her dad's being ordered to activate Skynet and all that stuff. You feel worse about John's foster parents in the second film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than you do about these kids who are just getting shot at their front door.
Because we don't even know who they are.
Yeah.
Also, again, with her weird murder mission, Terminatrix that is, she kills the guy in the drive-thru and confirms it with facial recognition. Then she kills the cat lady because she thinks she's Kate, and then gets confirmation that she's not. So what we do in there? Also, why does she have to lick the blood in order to confirm? Like, why would you do that?
There's a sensor on the tongue, obviously.
She doesn't have a tongue. She has liquid metal all over her body, so all she'd have to do is touch it. But they wanted to have this sexy blonde lady lick her finger. Come on. The amount of integrity is... It's low, man. It's low. It's very low.
I don't know. I think that one kind of works in terms of, like, the visuals of a monster, right? But it's not a good enough reason.
I'll give you this, because I was thinking this. You said that visually you think she's kind of cool as a villain. I don't really agree, but it didn't really matter. But now I think she does look good as a villain in the early 2000s in an underworld movie. As a weird, badass, day-walking vampire, like a Blade villain or an underworld villain. And then the weird, sexy blood-licking is fine. But as a robot from the future running around in the weird reddish leather, it's weird.
Yeah, you're right.
It's bizarre.
It's way more attention-grabbing than she should be, especially considering that she's not designed for... Well, either she's not designed for, or she chooses not to use her human interaction interface. She just doesn't.
Right. That's another thing I'm honestly struggling with, and I know at this point it's not that kind of movie, and it doesn't matter, and no one's gonna care, and the Terminators don't technically have sexes or genders, but the idea, you got to get over why Arnold looks like Arnold, because they chose Arnold. He's the Terminator. He's the T-101. Fine. The T-1000 they sent back to look like a typical Western American cop. Fine. Okay. But why is this more specifically shape-shifting robot that you didn't use to seduce the 25-year-old dude? That's not a part of the story. Why does she keep going back to the hot blonde? What's the point? Well, like... I know no one cares about that. I get that. It's just... I'm open to the idea of finding out that the Terminators do have a gender if they want. I'm that kind of person, but, like, that's clearly not what's happening in these movies, and I just don't understand it. I at this point, especially after Judgment Day, and I think this is, like, my thoughts, like, the conclusion of my thoughts. with where we are after after Judgment Day, I expect better. I don't feel wrong questioning certain things, assuming there is a point, a reason, an objective to the decisions that are made visually, narratively, actions, all that. And there's so much in this movie that just doesn't end up having a legitimate explanation or a good one.
I think for me, there's a moment in this film that sort of encapsulates how it just kind of falls short as a Terminator film because it thought it was too cool to be a Terminator film in some ways.
Okay.
There's a line where they're in the graveyard and they're getting shot at, and the Terminator, the T-100 or 101, and John are in the car, and he tells Kate to, like, I think it's something like, if you want to live, get in the car, which clearly is supposed to be a callback to come with me if you want to live.
Yeah.
But like,
just
if
say
you want
it.
to live, get in the car is so much less cool.
Yeah, I know, just say it.
Come with me if you want to live.
Right.
Just say it.
I also honestly find,
say it, man.
Yeah, I found the Terminator talk to the hand thing really cringy, but that's just me.
It was a little bit of a nice tie back to the idea that he's learning lingo, but it didn't really make sense because the reason he was learning lingo in Judgment Day is because he was taking orders from John, and John was helping him blend in. In this one, he just does it because they're trying to come up with more iconic lines for the Terminator to have.
I guess.
It's not good. It's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah. It should be better than this.
It should.
There's enough good stuff in here that you could rewrite this as a good Terminator film. But it's, I think, in my opinion, I can't really put this into words, but in my opinion, it's like infected by the 2000s, like the early 2000s.
Oh, I absolutely know what you mean. I think I don't fully understand what the correct terminology or the infection is, but the style of movies from like 1999 to 2005, I've grown to hate so much. There are movies I love because I like those movies, but the style, like I absolutely know what you mean.
It's almost 100% about the spectacle, and the spectacle has no it has no emotional significance. It has no logical reason. It's just
weird.
Hey,
it's
look,
like,
it's a scary robot lady in a red suit.
Yeah.
Hey, look, like there's, I don't know, it turns out it's actually like a shelter. It doesn't even look that impressive. Like it's old and dusty, and this is where we're ending the film in this. Like, also, it's not even visually striking, my dude. Like,
also, I gotta ask. I'm not real tech savvy, but the explanation in the end is that Skynet wasn't housed in anything because it's software. Forgive me, but isn't there still something, like, wouldn't there still have to be a server of some sort that you could blow up? Isn't there like a building somewhere in Europe that if, like, I think the building they go to in Age of Ultron is a real building, is it not? Or like for the internet, and if you blew that up, we'd lose like a big part of the internet. Like it'd be fucked up. Like there's not anything that Skynet is like housed in at all. That doesn't make any sense.
I couldn't really tell you what all of it is, but there are physical, like there's physical infrastructure for the internet or any sort of software that you might create. There are data banks and servers that you have to have. And I think that they were trying to go for the Ultron vibe of like, because it's an intelligent artificial
it's housed in everything now kind of thing.
It can just inhabit everything. I mean, I think the idea of like that virus that they were actually trying to destroy, I think that is Skynet tricking them into giving them control of all that. They never actually say that, but I'm pretty sure that's the situation.
That's kind of glossed over, but I'm willing to ignore it for right now because there are bigger issues.
Yeah. Right. So Skynet, the idea is that it's already everywhere and you're not going to be able to kill it by blowing up just one location. You might damage or wound it. You might stop it for a minute. You might prevent a nuclear holocaust, but it's still alive. And so I think his choice to trick them into going into the bunker is a very dad choice, in the sense that it's like he's thinking long term. He's like, they might survive for another couple of years if they manage to break into a military base in the next 5 hours to destroy Skynet, which unlikely. Or I could send them to a bunker where I know they'll be safe even as the nuclear holocaust happens. This is like the one part of the movie that I kind of defend, because it's kind of a good twist.
I get that.
But like that's the only
Yeah.
like Kate and her dad are the only part of this film that I'm like, yes, love that.
Get it.
Love that for you.
'Tis not a whale, though. 'Tis not a whale.
No, it's been broken.
Yeah. I do think this is the second time I've seen this movie all the way through. I saw it once a couple of years ago when I binged.
You know, I think me too.
Yeah, so I mean,
I
maybe
no, but when they walked into the bunker, I was like, I know what this is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if maybe we have to give it another try or something. Maybe it hasn't solidified. Certain films, I find it now in my old age, my opinion on films shifts a lot more than it used to when I was a youth. Okay. So I'm just wondering if I'll watch this randomly sometime next summer and I'll be like, you know what, this slaps. I don't think it's gonna. But as we discussed in our first marathon, my opinion on the Indiana Jones over the last 3 years has been all over the place.
True.
It has fluctuated depending on how you watch them. And I wonder if when we finish this marathon, we're now halfway through it, if a part of the bigger picture, it either shines or it's made worse. I don't know yet. I remember bits and pieces of the next one, and I'm very excited to give it another try. I don't remember if it's good or not. I just remember liking some of the concepts.
I don't know that I've seen much of the next one. I know I've seen the most recent one. I don't know that I've ever seen the fourth one. And from what I remember of the most recent one, there's at least a little bit of retconning.
Well, I was gonna see. I don't know anything about the last two, the most recent two, but I have seen the poster, and there's a certain character in the poster that was not in this movie. Though I will say, MCU comic book rules. There was no body. I know that applies to more movies, but like the MCU has made that way more popular. No body, so maybe she's out and about, but. That's I don't know, man. I want to get there. I want to get there.
Yeah. I think we like, if we want to talk about how this movie does in like the big picture with the rest of the franchise, we have to watch the other two movies before we can say anything. I get the sense that it will not be saved. It will be tucked in its own little corner.
Yeah.
And we're like, that was that. Let's try to do something better this time.
Yep. On to the next, though. What's the next one called? It's the one with Christian Bale.
Genesis?
And is that Genesis? I mean, it makes sense. I remember kind of what happens.
It's either Genesis or Dark Fate. I don't remember which
Dark Fate is like the last one or the fifth one. Salvation. Yeah. Salvation is the next one. Genesis is the fifth one. Dark Fate is the sixth one.
Okay.
Salvation, Genesis, Dark Fate. All right, cool beans.
All right. They're all roughly, except for the last two, they're all roughly 10 years apart.
That's so bizarre, but that'll be fun to talk about towards the end.
Yeah.
All right, but that's it. That's a Spy. Thanks for listening.
Bye.